Is it all good? Perfect. Perfect. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Institut Français in Portugal. My name is Clément Bruce. I am the Science Policy Lead of Future Earth, and I will briefly introduce what Future Earth is, but first, I would like to give a couple of thank you. And the first one is to our colleague from University of Brittany Occidentale, Charlene Guillou, who helped us set up all this event. A huge thank you also to the Institut Français in Portugal for welcoming us in this wonderful venue and setting all this technique. We're live on YouTube, and we have around 30 participants in the room with us. Thanks also to Guillaume Lheureux from Youth for Ocean and his partners who are organizing a side event right after hours. Thanks to you, of course, for participating, and to the wonderful speakers from the Future Earth community who will speak after I do. Can we change the slide? So, a very brief introduction about Future Earth, and then the most important part will be what will be presented by my colleagues from the Marine Network. So, Future Earth is a quite new research program, a research initiative, and we are coming from actually the merge or the ashes of the IGBP, Diversitas, and the IHDP. We've been started in 2013, and our secretariat has been established in 2015. So this is where we are actually with Future. So we have a global secretariat a bit everywhere in the world. We have 8 hubs. We have 18 national and local networks and 6 regional centers. As you can see at the moment, we're pretty north, but if some of you are coming from countries from the global south, we're more than happy actually to welcome you in the Future Earth community and in the Future Earth Secretariat. We're always welcoming new national committees, new global hubs, and so on. And this is the most important part about Future Earth. It's our network. We are an umbrella organization, and we're working with a global network of research and innovation communities, also spread all around the world, and working on all the thematics on climate change, biodiversity issues, and humanities and social sciences. And you can see here, so I'm pointing out to the IPOs, so the project offices of our networks, but of course we have researchers participating in those networks everywhere in the world. We estimate that we have researchers involved in our communities from more than 146 countries. So we have 19 research projects and also 8 knowledge action networks, and today we will focus on the marine ones, who are presented here. So these are the names of all our network, and we have today with us the Ocean Can, so the Knowledge Action Network, 3 of the Marine and Water Research Project, Futures Coast, Imba, and SOLAS, and 2 of the Governance Research Projects, the Earth System Governance and Pages. And without further notice, I'll give the speech to Anna Zivian from the Ocean Can. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Clément. I guess I'll get up here too. Welcome. Thank you to everyone who helped put this on. I just echo Clément's thanks. And I wanted to let you know I'm chair of the Ocean Knowledge Action Network, which was created with the support of Future Earth, as well as the Scientific Committee on Oceanic Research, IOC, and the World Climate Research Program. It was created by a team of researchers, journalists, NGOs, and others to promote the co-creation and co-design of ocean knowledge to lead to action for a healthy, productive, functioning ocean and communities. The Ocean Can is ready to meet the call of local, regional, and global decision makers and stakeholders. To do this, the Ocean Can is creating a modern approach to cross-network collaboration that connects end users that both provide and need ocean knowledge, science, and technology with people and resources to meet those needs and link their knowledge. That means connecting people on the ground with natural, social, and transdisciplinary scientists, technologists, and innovators, and connecting all of them with people who know how to guide and design co-design processes. The goal is to make new connections and to share resources and knowledge across all of these members of these networks in a timely way. The Ocean Can is built from the ground up, working directly with end users through the establishment of on-the-ground partnerships. These partners all provide in-kind resources, including staff with whom we work, and we help them build capacity in a place or within a network to actively curate how that network connects with the Ocean Can and with all of the other partners. We have such partnerships in South America, North America, Africa, Europe, and Asia to start. Through our network of networks, we connect these hubs with scientists, researchers, facilitators, and more to bring together the human elements needed to support the co-design of ocean science. To launch the Ocean Can, we start by connecting our collaborators with two programs that are decade endorsed, so that are endorsed by the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. Those are Marine Life 2030 and GEOS, the Global Ecosystem for Ocean Solutions. We also work with 3 decade-endorsed networking programs: Empowering Women, the Early Career Ocean Professionals Network, about which you'll hear more soon, and SmartNet. The Ocean Can also works closely with Future Earth and its ocean-oriented global research networks, a number of which you'll hear from here or by video, and other science-focused international groups and a number of international networks and partnerships and institutions. And finally, we work with 3 private sector institutions right now, a Danish company called Actor Global that will help us co-create the Ocean Can OP. Sorry for the pun, but it's a network of networks workspace that can help us effectively connect a number of networks, especially given that a number of our partners work in different languages across different time zones and on different platforms. We're also working with the Network Weaving Institute and the not-for-profit Moonjelly Academy to bridge science and new digital frontiers. The Ocean Can is independent, and its international project office was established. Tomorrow is our 1-year anniversary, yay, in Paris. We were established the IPO with a number of French research agencies. We're housed at CNRS, and we're hosted by CNRS and other agencies, and we're housed at the Sorbonne in Paris. I'm happy to answer questions afterwards, and I will turn to, is it to Alice? I will turn to Alice. Thank you very much.
So hello, everyone, and...
no, just to the mouth.
Oh, right up? Okay. So hello, everyone. It's nice to see some familiar faces in the room. I'm here today to talk to you about some of the networks, and the first one I'm going to be telling you about is Imba. So what is Imba? Well, it's about integrated marine biosphere research, and it's a more mature network than the Ocean Can. It's been going on since the IGBP times, and I'm going to be telling you a little bit about what the vision of Imba is and how we're working. So may I have the next slide? So Imba is really about ocean sustainability under global change and for the benefit of society. So it has a really human dimension aspect as well as the marine biosphere aspect. And we have a newly renewed science plan and implementation plan, and we have 3 grand challenges. But as well as these 3 grand challenges that have been going on for the past few years, we also bring in order to refresh the program, we bring in regularly some innovation challenges. So we have also some 4 new innovation challenges which are just starting. Next slide, please. So how do we work? So Imba's a big network, and I'll show you something about the network later on. But we really want to work more with policymakers and with the communities, and also with the other networks that are in this room, represented in this room. So we already have some joint programs, but we want to intensify this. And we want to do a lot more collaborative and transdisciplinary research, not just our research as scientists. So next slide, please. So this is to give you an idea of what we do in Imba. So we have the regional programs, and we also have some working groups. And some of the working groups are actually collaborative groups with some of the other programs. For instance, the Continental Margins Working Group is a joint effort with Future Earth Coast that I'll be telling you about later on. But we also have these regional programs, which are very, very active programs and have also been going on for some years. Next slide, please. So what do we do and what do we produce? What are the outputs of our work? Well, we have a conference series, Imbizo conference series. Obviously, there's been some difficulties in the past 2 years. I don't need to explain why, but we have managed also to do some online work, but we're going to be doing some starting up again very soon, and we have some symposias, and we also have summer school series, a series of summer schools, and a lot of publications. Next slide, please. So for more information, you can visit our websites, and also you can see all the different international project offices. The main ones for the moment are in Canada and in China. Thank you.
The next presentation is actually recorded because our colleague Eric couldn't make it to Lisbon because of COVID, unfortunately, so he registered his presentation.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Erik van Doren, and I would like to thank the organizers, especially Clément Brousse, who organized this session. I would have really loved to be there with you, but unfortunately, I tested positive for COVID-19 exactly at the wrong point in time. So it would have been really nice to discuss this in person, finally, after so many meetings that could not take place, but unfortunately, this is the way it is. Let me share my screen in order to tell you something for today. I am part of the Surface Ocean Lower Atmosphere Study International Research Project. And here you see what we are busy with. Since 2 decades already. And my apologies. And those 5 different puzzle pieces represent our core themes. A couple of years ago, they decided that it needed to be even more explicitly society relevant. That's where I came in, and we decided to organize a workshop in October 2016, which we called Solar Science and Society. I did that together with my colleague Christopher Andino. What we did is we picked 3 topics: the ocean's role in CO2 mitigation, the policy across the air-sea interface, and ship emissions. And at that workshop, we had 2 leaders, both a natural scientist and a social scientist, for every 2 topics, every 3 topics. And then we invited people to discuss. So the total group was about 25 people, and we thought, let's see where this goes. The report of this workshop and how we did that is published under as Marandino et al. In 2020 in Coastal Management. You see the reference here, and there you can see what we did in detail. To our positive surprise, all of the 3 subtopics organized in the next year workshops themselves as well. We met in Monaco to discuss ocean roles in CO2 mitigation, and a paper will come out soon, hopefully in Elementa this year, early next year. We discussed the air-sea interface policy in Rome. Same story, hopefully a paper which will focus more on sustainable development goals will come out in Elementa next year. And probably the most successful one was the one that had most history within SOLAS, namely ship emissions. And this resulted actually in a paper, which I will show you later, by Sonja Endres et al. In 2018. But probably even more importantly, it also resulted in a project under Belmont Forum Call, which started a couple of years ago and is still running, because a ship trace project, and for which you see the partners right here. And this is probably the most successful topic because it was tangible. It was had a good group of people around it that were already busy with the topic from all kinds of different disciplines. This is the paper that I wanted to show you, the Sonja Endres paper, Frontiers in Marine Science, focused mainly on scrubbers. We have been doing other stuff as well in the meantime. So we had a session on air-sea, on the policy of the air-sea interface, last year's Sustainability Research and Innovation Congress, a digital session. However, not that many people show up there, and this was also the hardest part. So SOLAS focuses on the interaction between the surface ocean and the lower atmosphere, right? But policy is actually either atmospheric policy or marine policy, not much interaction between the two. So we wanted to put that out there, but it's really hard to get some traction going on here. We were involved also in an Imbizo workshop organized by Imba on the governance of carbon dioxide removal, and on the same topic, more blue carbon focused, apologies, we organized, there was a side event organized where we were involved at the COP26 in Glasgow last year. So we thought it was relatively successful and we got some traction going. It is hard to keep social scientists, to integrate social scientists and people from arts and humanities into a natural science heavy project, but we've been trying and had a couple of successes. So in the future, we also want to continue this and focus on marine plastic, harmful algae blooms, and probably sea ice and indigenous communities. I would like to thank you very much for your attention. Enjoy the rest of the session and the United Nations Ocean Conference. Thank you.
So it's me again. The reason I'm speaking for a second project is because I live in Portugal, so it was the sustainable way of representing two of the networks. So I'm going to be telling you about Future Earth Coast now, and this is a project also that has come from the history of IGBP and IHDP, so the human dimensions and also the natural sciences. And it used to be called LOIX, which was not a very easy to pronounce. Lots of people used to look at this word and not be sure how to pronounce it. So Future Earth Coast was a rebranding of a quite well-known project, LOIX. So moving to the next slide, please. So why Future Earth Coasts? Well, here we are, and you can see from this NASA photograph that a lot of the population is living in the coast. In fact, depending on how you define the coastline, about 50% of the world's population is now living in the coastal zone. But it's also a nexus because it's where the atmosphere, the oceans, and the land all meet together. And right into this very thin rim around the land, we have 50% of the world's population. So that's why Future Earth Coast is important. So next slide, please. So what's the vision of Future Earth Coast? The vision is really to support a transformation to sustainability, to see how we can use and live in our coastal zone in a sustainable manner and without destroying nature, but also being able to use the fantastic resources that we have in the coastline. And how do we want to do that? By mobilizing knowledge and innovation and collaboration. Next slide, please. So what are the main pathways for us to reach this? Well, we need this common understanding of the oceans and the coasts and the people who live around them. And we also need to design some strategies, and we'll be talking about this in the panel, I think, about what the strategy is in order to reach this. And also to support but share all these sustainability initiatives that are going on. We can learn from each other. We can find out how people are solving their problems in one place, and in sometimes we can adapt that innovation for our situation. Next slide, please. So the approach of Future Earth Coast has been focusing on 4 different hotspots, so islands at risk, and particularly these small island developing states. The urbanization of coastal zones, which we see all over the world, and concentrations of people living in this vulnerable zone. Arctic coasts, probably the ones that are changing the most rapidly and that not being observed as actively as we would like to. And also these river mouth systems, the big estuaries and deltas, many of which are sinking, and where big populations live. Next slide. So what are we doing for the moment? So this is an example of what was presented last week at the Sustainable Research and Innovation Conference. So we've been developing a way of assessing the sustainability of global coasts, and we've tested it in various places. And just recently, we've tested it, and we haven't published this yet, but we've tested it in some of the big river mouth systems. So Chesapeake Bay, the Magdalena River mouth in Colombia, the Ganges Sundarbans, and also Cork Harbour. So we've been working on this and coming up with some ways of assessing that can be really easy to also explain to stakeholders and to policymakers. Next slide, please. So this is our network. It's quite a complicated network. We have lots of different hubs. We have lots of different regional engagement partners. So for instance, my university is one of the regional engagement partners. And we also have several IPOs. The main IPOs are at Southern Cross University, but also at the State Key Laboratory on Estuarine and Coastal Research in China. So if you want any more information about Future Earth Coast, there's our website, and you'll be able to find us easily online. Thank you very much.
Hello, is this okay? Yeah. Good morning. I'm a senior scientist at the Geological Survey of Denmark and Greenland in Copenhagen. And I'm very happy to be here in my hometown, actually, today, talking about one of Pages' working group that is working on Arctic cryosphere change and coastal ecosystems. The mission of Pages is very clear, is to use to understand the past and to use our knowledge about the past for a sustainable future. And that's really the key message I'd like to bring to the debate today. And that can seem a little bit contradictory when we are in an urgent situation of needing to take action now for climate. But it's really important that we take the time, actually, to look at the past, because there are many lessons to be learned from looking at the past. And if we are not able to set up the baselines, so how the Earth system looked like before change started, then we cannot really tell what is the actual magnitude and rate of the changes we are observing. And this is perhaps easier when we look at single parameters such as CO2 concentrations in the atmosphere, but when we are dealing with highly complex systems like interactions between ocean, biota, and climate, these baselines are much harder to define. And that's why we need to look back. Next slide, please. So in the latest IPCC report, AR6, this was actually quite nicely put into the report, which is the changes that we are observing, how far back in time do we need to go to find similar changes. And many of these striking events or striking trends are particularly acute in the Arctic region, which is the focus of ACME, of the working group I'm representing. So for example, we know that temperatures in the Arctic region are increasing 2 to 3 times faster than the global average. We also know that if, or rather when, the Greenland ice sheet is to melt completely, this represents 7 meters of global sea level rise, which is quite something. Arctic sea ice is expected to disappear in the summer in the Arctic Ocean by mid to late century, depending on what pathways of emissions we take. And glaciers are retreating as we speak. So in my department of glaciology and climate in Copenhagen, we have a glaciology group monitoring the Greenland ice sheet. And they estimate that we have about at least 200 very fastly receding glaciers at the moment in Greenland. Next slide, please. I was part of a group, a very large group of people that were drafting the action plan for the Arctic as part of the Ocean Decade for Sustainable Development. And this was hosted by the Danish Center for Marine Research. And we came, so the document is available, everyone can read it, and I wanted to bring up these transformative solutions that resulted from many sessions online because of the pandemic, of about 300 people meeting and talking across the monitoring community, the observing community, the modeling, climate modelers, and also geoscientists. And the 4 transformative solutions basically deal with, the first one deals with having data, openly accessible, having a mapping out basically what data and what information do we have from the Arctic and what is needed. The second solution was to really understand this complexity between the interactions of climate, ocean, and ecosystems in the Arctic region. The third one was understanding the trends, and this, of course, deals with different timescales as well. And the fourth was better predictions, better forecasts. And I write here that all of these transformative solutions need paleo data, but this was surprisingly not a very easy conversation to have with some of the groups. So it really required a very concerted and interdisciplinary effort of even having, a common language. What do we mean when we talk about long-term data? For the oceanographers, that would be a couple of years of data. What do we mean when we talk about ice-ocean interactions? Is this something happening also in a weekly term basis? Is it something about ice sheet development over millennia, etc.? So this is again to point out that we really need to have the long-term perspective into play if we are to solve these challenges. Next slide, please. What we came up with as part of the ACME working group was a review paper that was published earlier this year, where we tried to schematically represent how the present must inform and does inform the past. So the reconstructions we do are as strong as we understand present-day species distributions and trends, etc., and how the past also informs the present and must inform the future. So here we combine both environmental data and monitoring with calibrations that are based on paleo data or proxy data, with reconstructions and how this all comes to play for better reconstructions. Next slide, please. So to sum up, ACME, our working group, has two main goals for this first phase. And the first one is to focus on these proxies we use for achieving reconstructions and moving towards a capacity to have more reliable quantitative reconstructions so that we can use this proxy data, this paleo data, directly into testing and improving models so that we achieve better predictions. For example, right now, our models of sea level rise are fed with information that is based on 35 years of observations. And we want to be able to really represent natural climate variability in these models. And then we want to, this is a community-based effort, so we want to come up with a series of best practices for people using data and producing data. And so we have a strong focus on early career researchers. And next slide, please. And we have, so this is the publication I was mentioning that is in the Anthropocene. And we have, coming up, we have a special issue together with another working group of pages called Seaside. They focus on Southern Ocean sea ice changes, so it's a special issue on sea ice in both poles. And then we have a workshop especially directed to early career researchers on numerical methods for understanding proxy data and for producing better reconstructions. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Sophia. So next we have another video because another colleague had troubles joining us. Her flight got cancelled, so she's stuck in the US, but she's saving carbon. So here is the recorded presentation.
Hi everyone, I'm DG Webster. I hope you're having a great conference. I really wish I could be there, but unfortunately cancellations happen when you're trying to travel these days. So I'm here to tell you about the Earth System Governance Project's Task Force on Oceans Governance, or Oceans Task Force for short. Very quickly, the Earth Systems Governance Project is a network of researchers and practitioners and stakeholders who are all interested in developing research on the interface between global environmental change and governance. And of course, the oceans are a major area of interest for many of us. And that's why we started this Oceans Task Force. The task force generally is facilitative, so we do try to facilitate policy relevant research. For instance, in the Earth Governance Journal, we currently have a special issue called Science for Ocean Sustainability that contains papers that talk about how ESG research could be useful and provides insights for the UN Decade of Ocean Science. We've got a few more papers coming out in that, but there are quite a few up already. So you can always look it up, SOS, Science for Ocean Sustainability, and we'd be happy to have you read that. We also work on the co-development of science on ocean governance. And so one of our big projects here, which unfortunately was on hold during COVID, and we're just starting to get back into it, is the Oceans Governance Toolkit. And this is based out of a paper that came out from many of our participants in PNAS in, I think it was 2018, Moving Beyond Panaceas in Fisheries Governance. And the idea is less about providing some kind of technical knowledge and expertise, although that certainly is important and we would love to connect people up with that, but more about providing stakeholders and practitioners with the information they need to convince powers that be to give them the resources that they can utilize then to do what most of them already know needs to be done. That's what we have certainly learned in the various workshops that I was leading in different parts of the world pre-COVID, right? Everyone was saying how, they know they need to be more comprehensive. They know that oceans governance needs to be more holistic. But unfortunately, they don't have the resources, they don't get the time, they don't get the funding, they don't get the boots on the ground from their bosses, from policymakers and politicians, or indeed, they don't necessarily even get the buy-in from the general public. And so the idea here is to bring people together to share information about how things have worked, how things haven't worked, and to be able to use those just so stories to, again, convince the people who control the resources to put them in the right places. And so thereby to move beyond these very simple solutions that everybody likes to think will work in any context, but which in fact rarely do. So that's probably my 5 minutes. I will just go on to thank other members of the leadership team, Leandro Gonçalves, Candice May, Atsushi Ishii, and Yusuf Alouliman, all of whom have really helped to get the task force up and running and continuing in a strong way. So that's it from me. I hope, again, have a great conference, and let's go Oceans.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. It's really a treat to be here. I'm Erin Satterthwaite, and I'll be speaking on behalf of the Early Career Ocean Professionals Program. And the title is Engaging the Next Generation of, I want to add current, I think, to this. I think that's a really important point, current ocean leaders. So next slide, please. So what if we could bring new ways of thinking to global challenges related to ocean sustainability and environmental stewardship? I think that's what we're here for at this conference, and I think this is a really key point. And this is exactly the goal of the Early Career Ocean Professionals Program. Next slide, please. So you might be wondering, what are Early Career Ocean Professionals? You might hear the acronym Ecot. So an Ecot is somebody who self-identifies as being within 10 years or less of their professional training related to something related to the ocean, so some career. And I think it's important to say the definition is challenging. There are obviously different organizations, use many different criteria, but I think the important point is really we're trying to empower and engage people who otherwise might not be in the room or at the table. Next slide, please. And so the Ecot program serves as a backbone organization for engaging the next generation of environmental leaders and professionals within the context of the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. Next slide, please. And so currently we have 934 members from about 93 countries globally. And this number's hot off the press, but I'm sure with this conference it's going up. It's been really exciting to see that this change from the first global planning meeting of the decade till this conference. Next slide, please. And so the broad goals of the Ecot program are to provide networking and training opportunities for early career professionals around science to knowledge and action, as well as transdisciplinarity and diverse engagement. So really thinking about how do we build these skills that are needed for a lot of the things that we've been discussing today. Next slide, please. And so the Early Career Ocean Professionals Program achieves this through a couple means. We have task teams and funding calls that support these efforts, as well as regional nodes. So currently we have 3 regional nodes in Asia, Africa, and Canada. And we've also been we're in the process of developing one for the US, but we're really hoping this is a bottom-up kind of self-organizing effort. I think that's a really important part, that we have that bottom-up, top-down, and I like to say side-to-side aspects of this kind of emerging network. Next slide, please. And so the other way is through endorsed projects within the context of the Ocean Decade, as well as partnerships. I think, to me, that piece is really, really important. The goal of this is to find, as we've already heard from many of the other presentations, people who are thinking about this and doing it, but maybe in separate networks or organizations or efforts, and trying to bring those all together and make early career professionals around the world able to know about those opportunities. And on on the theme of partnerships, we have many supporters and partners, and I'm happy to see all of you today and hope that we can explore how we might continue to collaborate on some of these efforts. Next slide, please. And we welcome you to join us. Here are some ways that you can connect with us, as well as we'd really like to hear how you're thinking about this within your networks and organizations. And next slide, please. And finally, this is a picture from this conference. We did a Sustainable Ocean Net Walk with the early career community. This includes, I'd like to say, this community is not just early careers. It's meant to be for early career professionals and supporters of early career. And with that, I'd also like to say we hope that into the future that we don't even need an Ecot program. The goal is really that these aspects of this program are fully embedded into every network, program, institution, and organization, and we don't need to call it out separately. So that's really, to me, the goal is by the end that we don't have to have this. So thank you, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here and look forward to the discussion.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot to all the presenters. I'd like to invite the 4 speakers actually to sit on the stage, and we have approximately 40 minutes left. So I have a couple questions for the 4 speakers, but you're all most welcome to ask your own questions actually about these networks that were presented. So yeah, you have 2 mics and good. So my first question, and I will ask it first to Anna, but the others are also welcome to answer, is why do you see Future Earth? And your networks are affiliated with Future Earth. Why do you see Future Earth as a suitable place to achieve SDG 14 and other SDGs? Because you're all working on marine sciences, of course, but you're working in interaction with many other SDGs, and I would like to hear more about this.
Well, I think, Clément, you just hit the nail on the head. We're working with ocean and coasts, but with the Future Earth broader global research networks, we're also connected, as you saw with Alice's presentation on Future Earth coasts and with Eric's presentation on SOLAS. It's not just the ocean in isolation. It's the ocean, the coasts, the land, the atmosphere that are all together. And Future Earth is a place that brings together researchers internationally. I mean, you saw that as well in several of the slides. There are people from all over the world with institutions in multiple countries. As Clément said, over 140 countries are engaged. And so Future Earth is really a place where these international collaborations can be made, where the networks already exist, and where we can work to bring together the research and knowledge of those networks and our other partners to really bring this action to bear to solve problems and to achieve SDG 14 as well as other SDGs.
Would you like to add something?
Yes, I think that the great thing about Future Earth is that it brings together the whole global community. Whereas most of the time we work, for instance, I work a lot with the European Union and the countries in the European Union. But through Future Earth, we can really address the global ocean, which is so difficult for us to do in our national or regional funding agencies. And you learn so much about what's going on the other side of the world, and also the solutions they come up with, which you may not be aware of, but are very important and sometimes can be very informative for your process. So Future Earth really has a very good role to play.
Thanks for that. Yeah, and I just would like to add, I think in addition to the international global aspect, to me, the cross-sector and transdisciplinarity components are really important. I feel like venues and networks that bring together professionals across this knowledge to action knowledge to solution spectrum are really important. And so to me, that's been something that, at least being a part of Future Earth in my past roles, I've really valued and would really like to see continue in other, from local to global scales.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for your answers. I have another questions, and of course, if you have questions in the crowd, feel free to raise your hand, and I will bring my mic to you. But I would like to know a bit more about how your networks or how yourselves as individuals are working with the other networks within Future Earth, and what could be done, and if there are people out there who would like to work with you in the future, what can be done, and what are you trying to achieve with this collaboration?
Yeah, I can. Is this on? Yeah. Well, I'm here not speaking on behalf of the entire Pages effort, which includes 17 working groups, as I mentioned, but from the perspective of my own group with an Arctic focus, then I can say that we have within Pages there's a quite strong collaboration across groups, and we're trying to, it's always with the point of view of trying to get a holistic view on the ecosystems or climate processes we're trying to characterize. So for example, we have collaboration with other working groups, either emerging new working groups or working groups that are already on phase 2, phase 3 and have achieved quite a few of their goals. And then we have also very strong focus on, because of the early career researcher emphasis, we have a quite strong focus on collaborating with networks that are dedicated to Arctic or polar early career scientists. And in that regard, I'd be very interested actually to discuss with you whether Ecot has an Arctic node or is planning to have, or how do we bring all these early career scientists together in the future? Do you want to add something? Yeah.
So I touched on this in my two presentations. There's quite a lot of interaction with the other programs, for instance, between Imba and Future Earth Coast, but also with the Ocean Can, and also with Imba and SOLAS. So we do develop these inter-program projects because we can learn so much from each other, and we have different but complementary expertise. So I think it's a very useful collaboration. But also, for instance, Imba collaborates a lot with other organizations such as ISIS, which are very important to the fisheries community.
Yeah, no, I'll just add, do you have a question in the back? Oh, okay. I'll just add that, as I mentioned in our presentation, the Ocean Can, its goal is to connect all of these networks. And so we have been working with all the groups who presented today, as well as with on-the-ground hubs and partners. And we're starting that in a small fashion to try to ensure that we do it well. But we have partners, for example, in Seychelles, Ghana, Taiwan, Brazil, as well as in the US and Europe. And I think one of the things that's very important is connecting all of these groups. Future Earth Coasts also works with people in Ghana. SOLAS also works with people in Ghana. So making sure that our on-the-ground partners who have connections to the different Future Earth networks also connect with each other, as well as with new networks and partners.
Thanks a lot. Are there questions from the participants? Yes.
Yeah, Denis Bailly from the University of Brest. I would like to know in your network, and well, Alice, I'll tell you, I liked very much Loix because it looks like a Breton name, so I like Loix. Yeah, okay. What did the UN Ocean Decade provided to you as new opportunity? Did it change something? Does it change something? Or, is it a mean to attract new people or resources? So have you any comment on that?
Yeah, I'll speak to that. Thanks for your question. From my perspective, I really view it as in some ways, an umbrella that can bring us together around a shared vision and goal. And I think a lot of these efforts have been kind of happening to some degree connected, but in some degree kind of isolated, whether sectors or regions. I think that to me, the convening and visibility, I think, are really important aspects, as well as the novel connections. Even, I guess, speaking from a personal place, I think I've met people I otherwise I don't know if I would have met except for through this process. And I think that it's hard to say, right, to go back in time, but I really do think that it's building those relationships kind of as the start, and the trust, I think, are something that the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development process has really provided. So that, I guess, kind of speaks to that.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. I do feel that the UN Ocean Decade has, from our perspective, so an Arctic perspective, really been very fruitful, because it has already before 2021, it has been a motor for getting everyone together and drafting these action plans of what do we want with this Ocean Decade. And also, it was, as I mentioned in my talk, it was a massive effort of interdisciplinary communication. So having on the same room, Zoom room, unfortunately, but having on the same room people who would maybe not meet and not have a common language to talk about their science. So that was quite a good process. And now we are yet to see whether all of these measures will be implemented. We hope so. I was very surprised / shocked to hear at one of the plenary sessions at a conference here that SDG 14 is the one receiving the least funding of the SDGs. I see a lot of people nodding in the room, but I did not know that, and I think that has to change. And we are now, of course, also in a environment or in a climate of other priorities being set in the political agenda. So I hope that funding will, of course, make a difference for implementing these initiatives. But from the point of view of the researchers and NGOs and other organizations working with these topics, we did have a big motor for coming together and defining what do we want out of the Ocean Decade. What is the science that we need for the future that we'd like to achieve? Yeah, so that's been a very good process, I think. Yeah.
And I'll just say quickly that I think we've been working with several of the programs of the decade, as I mentioned, 3 networking programs, as well as Marine Life 2030 and the Global Ecosystem for Ocean Solutions. And I think those programs may have sort of come together without the decade, but the decade was a real catalyst to bring groups that are working on biological observations in the ocean, for example, with Marine Life 2030, or with a real focus on solutions and action, as with the Global Ecosystem for Ocean Solutions, to bring those together and really build them up.
Thanks, Anna. Yes, and I must say the Ocean Can has been really very useful in this exchange about the UN Decade for the Ocean Sustainability. But the other thing I wanted to say is that, COVID has been a problem too. For instance, Future Earth Coast had a decade-endorsed conference that was going to be in Australia in 2020. And that obviously didn't happen. So, but the Ocean Can has been our main sort of way of interacting through, so that we have a concerted dialogue.
I just wanted to add one thing on COVID. It has caused a lot of disruptions, but at the same time, I'm hopeful. I mean, it's wonderful to be here in person and to see all of you and to make these connections. But I'm also hopeful that, I mean, my God, we saw the challenges in the Pages presentation for the climate. We have learned better ways of working together, and I think this is one of the big things that the Ocean Can is also working on. How can we optimize our ways of working together when we're not together in person? And I think, you know, for much worse, but for a tiny bit better, we've learned that in the last 2 to 3 years, and we're constantly trying to improve it.
Thanks a lot. There was another question here.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the presentations from the panels. Maybe we are the least people who understands about the science because we are not scientists. We are officials from Indonesia coming here. The title is very interesting to us. We, in this conference, are talking about actually the blue finance things. And I must agree with you about the SDG 14 receives the least funding compared to the other goals. So, well, let me, on behalf of the four of us here, thank the organization and also the committee that put together this, this session. Future Earth is very new to us. That's why also that's another reason why we would like to know. The achievement of the SDG is very important in our country, in Indonesia. We are the largest archipelagic country in the world, and so on. But what we would like to maybe know, how would you bring all this information about the scientific, findings and everything into achieving the goals or the targets, meeting the indicators of the goals itself? Because when, from the government point of view, we were being asked, like, well, did you meet this? By 2030, you have to achieve certain things, under 14.1, 14.2, and so on. So that's what we would like to see. Maybe it's very classical, but you how do you translate the scientific findings into the policy? We are from the Ministry of Development Planning, Indonesia. Unfortunately, from what the maps I saw, there's no dots in our countries, like, from the presentation. So that's also another challenge probably. But, from our perspective, like, well, that's also a challenge, right? That's something that if we were able to be successful, and we hope in our presentation yesterday about raising some funding through Blue Finance, definitely it will go to the research. And we are talking about research connecting the big oceans, the Pacifics and the Indian Oceans. We have the Indonesian through flows. You must know about the SOLAS. I involve a little bit on that. But also in this, I would say, small-scale areas of waters, including the coral reefs, and then, talking about the marine protected areas and the people and so on. So that's one thing, but maybe the second thing is more technical. We are also interested in the ocean energy thing, and that's very much related to another goal in the SDGs. We have been talking with the French government. That's another reason why we are here, to work on the possibility of developing ocean energy in Indonesia. Is there any thoughts from the panels about that? Maybe I'll stop there and then we can continue the discussion. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your questions. I actually have quite a long presentation that was made by a colleague of mine, which will be of special interest to you, about the SDG goals, targets, indicators, and how they're really aspirational rather than a recipe of how to achieve these goals. So if you talk to me later on and give me your contact, I'll send that to you, because it's a very good and interesting presentation. And Indonesia, fantastic. We'd love to work with you, because obviously the archipelago nation of, the archipelago nation is fantastic. So it would be absolutely great to work with you. And we also have quite a lot of information about ocean energy developments. So please feel free to give me your card at the coffee break, and I'll be able to give you some more information.
if I may, just before you speak, Anna, I have a short answer regarding the structure of futures that could be interesting for you. Indeed, we don't yet have a national node in Indonesia, but we are more than willing to have one, actually. And the way it works, actually, is that the national nodes, so the national committees that we have, for example, in France, in the US, or in the Philippines, in Japan, are national researchers with their policymakers and with their ministries who are gathering their local research community to work together, their sustainability researchers community, to work together and to bring their messages to Future Earth. We organize an annual General Assembly. We have all these networks, and being part of this actually would give you an entry, would be an entry point for you to be in the Future Earth umbrella. And then another way to join Future Earth is for individuals to apply to join the steering and the scientific steering committees of all these groups. None of the group at the moment is directly managed by Future Earth. We are a support, the Secretariat of Future Earth is a support organization, and we help and we encourage our groups, the networks that we sponsor, to be as transdisciplinary, as international, and as inclusive as possible. And they renew their steering committees every year, at least 1/3 of their steering committees. So there are tons of opportunities to join the Future Earth community. So I'm more than happy also to have a chat with you and to put you in contact with our colleagues who are managing our regional node in Asia, actually.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask Clément to respond, but as far as the Ocean Can goes as well, it's really a pleasure to have people here from ministries, because I think it's very important as we connect science, policy, and action, to have the implementers be part of that. So I'm also happy to talk to you, and as an ocean conservancy, which is the organization I work for in the US. It's an environmental NGO. We work a lot on ocean energy, ocean renewable energy, and so I would be happy to put you in touch with some of my colleagues who work on ocean renewables.
Perfect. Is there another question? Yes.
This is such a great set of presentations. I feel like Future Earth is this. It has tremendous potential to support more rapid action around the Sustainable Development Goals and around sustainability writ large. I'm curious if the panelists feel like there's a certain sort of like sector that is most important to bring into the network that you feel is maybe missing in your own space that would help the community drive forward faster. And then I'm secondarily curious as to, like, is there a value in sort of funding for large-scale central tendency products that the network uniquely can do? And it feels like within your own networks, you have developed those products, whether it's in Pages or in Coasts or in others. And I'm wondering if, how you see the progress of those products developing that would be that are the unique capacity of a broader global network of networks.
I have thoughts, but first of all, I want to thank, you may not know who asked that question. It's Josh Tewksbury, who directed Future Earth. So he has a deep understanding of the potential for Future Earth and did a wonderful job actually supporting the Ocean Can, supporting the creation of the Early Career Ocean Professionals Network through some really innovative concepts. I do think that there are missing voices, and we really should focus on making those better included. One, as I said, I'm really happy that the ministers are here, because I think that voices from government are currently underrepresented. And then two, I think voices from the global south, but particularly from indigenous communities and local communities are underrepresented as well. And we're not going to solve any problems without those voices as part of the solution, and indeed leading the solution. And I do think the Early Career Ocean Professionals Network is a good start. I 100% agree with Erin that we want not to have to talk about that. Similarly, we want not to have to talk about having indigenous voices lead. We need to remove roadblocks. There's the empowering women, and that's terrific, but empowerment implies that, we're just going to give you some power. People have power. We've put roadblocks in their way, so let's remove the roadblocks. Part of that is by building out those connections at Future Earth. I forgot your second question, so I'll let somebody else answer it.
Actually, you answered beautifully. So.
Hello? Yeah. I would just like to emphasize again the aspect of including indigenous peoples, because I think that's really something that we're missing. In the context of the Arctic, then Canada is doing some very significant efforts in that regard. But as an example, we've been working for several years in a very important sea ice ecosystem region, which is Polinia, called Pique-à-la-Sossoac, that is actually 80,000 square kilometers north of Baffin Bay. And this is a beautiful example. It's nominated to be UNESCO protected area, and it's a beautiful example of a marine protected area candidate. But it is just bridging Greenland and Canada. And that brings a lot of issues in terms of governance and in terms of how to set up something that is manageable and who is to lead this effort. So there are certainly some roadblocks there, and we feel as scientists, we feel that we can provide all the information, or as good information as we have. We can do studies, we can make recommendations, we can assess the vulnerability of the ecosystems, etc. But when it really comes to making a difference for the people living there and for the ecosystems, there has to be a better dialogue and a better transference of information from the scientists or the working groups to the policymakers. And those channels are not always flowing as smoothly as they should. So I like your idea of this, of thinking about creating some products that are more actionable as part of this network of networks. Yeah, I think actionability would be the most important, something that decision makers can, grab and know what to do with it quickly. Yeah. Alice? Oh.
Yes, so the product I showed from Future Earth Coast, the one we're developing for coastal assessment, we spent a whole year, a workforce of about 15 people working on this, and some science communicators, some very good science communicators leading on this to show us how we can better convey our results so that anybody can understand them, whether they're general public, policymakers, but they don't have to be scientists and specialists in that. So we're hoping that we'll be able to use that in other contexts as well. And in fact, the SDG 14 development, assessing how well you're doing on SDG 14, as I was showing the presentation this morning, I realized that we could definitely use this product and adapt it. So it's a challenge. We can all work as a network together and see if we can do that, take it further.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, and great question. One thing that really stands out to me in following up on this is I also think, at least for me, Future Earth has really been in some ways like a professional society, a global professional society. I think that aspect really is unique in a lot of ways a global society around sustainability, I think is a key part. And so that really does require this, making sure we have the right people in the room and the voices and assessing who's not there. And I think in thinking about that, at least from my perspective, as we've already heard, I think local communities and having making sure that we have connectivity from global to local scales, and really that those pathways are there and active, and there's kind of clear convergence, not necessarily, I think it's the heterogeneity is extremely valuable. And I think that's something we can learn from each other on. We've been doing that actually in the early career professional community, sharing in other countries the ways that early careers are being engaged and empowered that maybe we could use in our own institutions. And that's been, for me, extremely powerful. And I think I would just add one other piece that stands out that I've seen is the bringing the stakeholders to the table early, bringing the entire group of people, not just having researchers there and then stakeholders down the line, but making sure that these projects are truly co-designed and matching the stakeholders to the right scale. I think that's another important thing. Sometimes not in a perfect way, but it's just so that we're not talking across scales and topics and things, trying to create that tangible piece, I guess you're getting at. I guess the last thing I'd like to add to this is, from my perspective, I had a postdoc that was with Future Earth and a U.S. academic institution, and I've talked to other early career professionals, and I think having that cross-sector postdoc ability was fairly unique, at least in the U.S. I think maybe in other places potentially more well-developed, but that was something I think that Future Earth could really have a unique contribution to continue those fellowship programs. So thanks.
Thanks a lot. We have time for one or two more questions from the crowd. Yep. Denis again.
If I may ask a second one, because well, at the end of engaging with stakeholders, and it's a good one, it's a nice one, but I think we have another problem. So we work all on sustainability science, and the question is, in the academia, for us, institutionalized recognition, career of that kind of research. How does Future Earth, is there any kind of, in Future Earth, any kind of assessment on how in the different, in Europe, in North America, or in Asia, or in Africa, this is emerging in the academia with a recognition and with creating standard for evaluating the quality of the work, not against pure disciplinary historical academic criteria, but to set this and set the organization and set the labs that really claim that they are in sustainability, and maybe try to, from the experience of developing the science of human health or medicine, the health science, not do the same mistakes and not make it only a biochemical science business.
Yeah, so I will try to answer this. Thanks a lot, Denis, for sending the rock. So actually at Future Earth, we're advocating for trans and interdisciplinarity. And saying this is actually quite easy, and that's why we really want to rely on these national committees that we have, who are well implemented in their countries, working with their national governments to advocate for this. And as Future Secretariat, as this umbrella organization working with the networks, I don't think that at the moment we have the resources to make this change or to foster this change. But with the national committees, with the national community, I think that we could try to work with the governments to have these new labs that are transdisciplinarity, that are working on transdisciplinarity and not anymore only on very targeted and focused areas. But this also has to come from the fundings. And you know that in France, it's, for example, very difficult to find funding for a transdisciplinarity project, for example. Things are changing where through workshop, through conferences that we organize a bit everywhere in the world, we're getting more and more people in this project with us, with this vision of transdisciplinarity, interaction across the SDGs. So things will come. Unfortunately, it's a bit slow at the moment. We are trying to make this more rapid, but you are all more than welcome to help us, and I think we all agree with this at the moment, that disciplinarity is not a way anymore to solve the global challenges that we're facing with the emergency. So yeah, we're more than happy to work with you and to develop more this aspect of research.
This is a big problem in the institutions that Denis has referred to. So my background is in chemical oceanography, and whenever I'm assessed as an academic, I'm assessed on my chemical oceanography. But my research has gone way away from chemical oceanography years ago, because I realized that eutrophication is not a problem of marine chemistry. Eutrophication is a societal problem that we need some scientific information to solve, but the real solutions are within society. They're within the economics, they're within the human dimension, and so half of the work I do now is completely disregarded within my own scientific community. But it's the part that I think really matters and that I really care about, because I'm not here just to study the problem. I'm here to try to solve it. And I can only do that in a transdisciplinary way with the stakeholders. I can't solve the problem in a laboratory.
I just wanted to add, in terms of funding, that it's true that most countries are sort of slow at catching up on the aspect of interdisciplinary research. But if you look at, for example, EU calls, they are more and more focusing on this, bringing together different disciplines, having solutions involving stakeholders, involving local communities. And I think that that will naturally lead to a better sort of recognition of sustainability sciences, or at least that's my hope. And I totally agree with Alice that many of these problems we can't solve in the lab. And I think that's becoming also something that has been at least reaching the European Union and the Research Council there. Yeah. So it's not all doom, I think.
Well, and I just wanted to add, again, Josh has been working on this for a while and continues to work on it, but I think things like the Sustainability Research Conference that Future Earth just organized is a place where academic departments can start to see the value in interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary, multi-sectoral research. I went into the really hideously named Alt-Ac path, Alternative to Academia, partly because of the lack of recognition of the importance of transdisciplinarity, but I do think it is growing. I think the research funding calls have gone from, yeah, give us a social scientist, ideally an economist, at the end of the project and we're all good, to really having more meaningful, I don't think we're there yet, but more meaningful engagement from stakeholders, public and multiple disciplines. And as that happens more, I think you're right, there will be more recognition in the academy for the value of those things. But you know, and there are more and more academic departments that are set up as interdisciplinary departments, but and more journals that are starting to publish, that are focused around publishing interdisciplinary research. We're not anywhere close to where we need to be, because we're not going to solve any of these. I mean, basic research is great. Those journals are all important. Having the disciplines is critical, but we're not going to solve the societal problems, as Alice said, without the transdisciplinary, multi-sectoral work.
Thanks. Yeah, and I just would like to add to that. This is the incentive aspect and rewards of the challenges we're discussing are something we've been talking about actually with some of the early career professionals, because obviously advancing in your career is dependent in a lot of cases on these incentive and reward systems. And one of the things we've been very recently working on is actually trying to document the different ways that different institutions and programs are doing this that work well as a solution. I think that this is a really important point, and one that I think so not only I think within academic or other institutions, but thinking about how are you rewarded, in government or industry, and seeing where some of those incentives might align that could be sources, like tangible aspects and sources of collaboration. We can collaborate on this product that we all are valued on, or maybe there's different products that come out of it depending on, which sector and what kind of incentive structures exist. But yeah, thanks. I think this is a fabulous point and something we've been recently talking a lot about. So thank you.
Just one final thing. I do think it's pretty neat that we have a chemical oceanographer, an interdisciplinary social scientist, a but a couple biologists, a lawyer, Eric, and another social scientist on the panel. So it's a good start here.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Our side event actually needs to end in a couple of minutes, so I would like to give you all the speech one last time for 30 seconds, 1 minute for a wrap-up message, maybe a message about your most exciting project to come within your network, or a message of hope that you want to deliver here. If I may, I will start with Future Earth broadly. As Anna mentioned, we have this international conference that we started 2 years ago called Sustainability Research and Innovation. It was held a week ago in South Africa. The next edition will be in Panama next year. We are welcoming for these events the international sustainability research community. There are tons of sessions. There are possibilities for governments, for scientists to meet with each other and to have actually such sessions to discuss together and to build together a future and to influence funding sources, next calls, maybe influence also how labs are put together. So feel free to join us next year. There are tons of initiatives within Future Earth. The Pathways initiatives working on trajectories to achieve the SDGs and the interactions between the SDGs. The Earth Commission is working also on delivering messages for the UNFCCC COP and the CBD COP. And I will add a message on behalf of our colleague Eric from SOLAS. SOLAS is actually opening a master degree on interdisciplinarity in ocean science at the university in Galway, and this is starting in September this year. So this is an example of what we can do also within the networks of Future Earth. And SOLAS is also holding its Open Science Conference in South Africa, in Cape Town, in September. There is a call for applications for sessions there that is on their website. And Erin, if you...
Yeah. Thank you, yeah. I think for me, the take-home message is just really thinking about how do we build some of these new relationships. I think having the spaces and looking around the room even today, it's exciting to see faces I know and those I don't. And I think finding these new opportunities, especially with early career professionals and others, is going to be a really important aspect to moving forward. And so for me, it really does come down to the relationships, both kind of collaborations, and Vladimir at the UN Decade event said those collaborations often turn into friendships and kind of lifelong partnerships. And so for me, that I think is the biggest thing. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you very much. I don't have anything to add, but I actually would like to give the word to Lee, because Lee is from the Pages office, and as I said several times, I'm here representing one of the working groups, and I think maybe she would like to say something
Well, you yeah, no problem. Okay. Put me on the spot. No, I think you said it very eloquently. Pages, should and has a voice within these baseline scientific areas. And I guess the take-home message is, we need to look in the past in order to predict the future. And this is our major objective with Pages. And so please, on this note, I'd like to say, take some of our magazines. It'll just give you an idea about what we're working on. So essentially, go paleo science.
And I just would echo Aaron. The Ocean Knowledge Action Network, obviously all those three elements are important. You all are critical to knowledge, action, and being part of the network. I'm so excited that we have such great turnout. I'm really excited to talk to any of you after this. Thank you very much. Thank you, Clément. Thank you, Josh. And thanks to all of the people who helped organize this. And I'm excited for the next discussion as well with the youth for ocean.
So this puts me on the spot because I have several take-home messages for different projects. So rather than do that, I'm going to say thank you to Future Earth, because you can bring all these projects together and make us more productive. And also through the Ocean Can, we can move from the knowledge to the action and really bring these networks of networks together in a productive way. So thank you. Thank you, Future Earth. And thank you, the French Institute. Vive la France.
So thanks a lot, everyone, for participating in this session, for asking questions, staying until the end. So this is the end of our side event. There is a bit of coffee and some snacks at the back of the room. You're most welcome to stay a bit longer. And this actually event will be followed by one by Youth for Ocean and the Surf Friday for Foundation. So some of you, if you have some more time, are welcome to stay for the second part of this event.